by former General Prabowo. So if I can invite you up to give us your thoughts on changing trends and shifting global order from an ASEAN perspective. This will run for about 50 minutes, and there will be a Q&A afterwards.
Dominic, thank you for the very kind introductions. It is indeed a privilege for me to be here and to meet with all of you, the members of FFCT, Friends of Thaksin, Friends of Surin, that was mentioned earlier. Surin Pichuan was a very good friend of mine too. I visited Bangkok a couple of times due to his invitations. I even went to his hometown, Nakhon Sir Tamarat, and spent some times there with his families, and it was a big loss for all of us of his sudden death. And I'm very grateful to be here, continuing his relationship with the club, and allow me at this great opportunity to share a few thoughts about ASEAN that was organized, the session that was organized by Dominic and Fuadi. If I may share some points here with regard to challenges, opportunities, and perhaps roads ahead of ASEAN and the shifting of the global world. The world around us is shifting much faster than we have seen in decades, and old certainties are definitely fading, new rivalries are rising, and I believe ASEAN's calling is going deeper than simply hedging between great powers. It is important for ASEAN to anchor the values that should outlast any cycles of competitions. What are they? One is sovereignty. Two is human dignity. Three is shared prosperity. And four is sustainability. These four values need to be treated more than just words, but these are fixed stars in which countries of ASEAN should navigate. And in times like this, where loudest voices often get more attentions, it is important for ASEAN to make sure that steady progress in achieving those four values is always on the top mind of leadership, because ASEAN was never designed to be simply an arena where major powers outside ASEAN play their contests, but it is a region in which members of ASEAN choose to be the authors of the region's future, not simply audience for someone else's script. So when I speak about sovereignty, I mean every nation can stand tall, that human dignity means every person, from the rice farmers in the rural village to the tech entrepreneurs in the high skyscraper, deserve to be seen and to be heard. And that shared prosperity means everyone finds room to grow. And sustainability means we refuse to mortgage our children's futures for today's convenience. So, ASEAN should be the region where consistency builds confidence, and where neighbors honors their words, where standards are fair, where we can disagree without humiliations, and that our real test for cohesiveness of ASEAN is not in the conference room, but in the daily life. So if ASEAN matters, it means families in ASEAN should feel in their markets, in their job, in the quality of the air they're enjoying. So we think we must make sure that we align to this principle and depend our action on those principles. So what does exactly means? What exactly are we navigating through? Let me speak plainly about the risks that often keep me awake at night. Start with something every family understands: the rising costs of everything. It may seem distant, but this is the reality. When the world fragments, meaning when trade rules, tax standards, and stories of leaders, of narratives, goes different directions, it is families that feel the consequences. When trade agreements fail to be achieved, container sits longer, and when technology is not adopting the same standard, compliance costs multiply, and small businesses will experience the pain. I give you one example on the issue of technology. When we have incompatible data rules and payment system across borders, then who pay the biggest cost? It's the smallest players. And startups often face a maze of forms and fees. On the other hand, big platforms can easily adapt and move on. So it is very important that agreement at the international level is achieved so that we families in these regions able to feel an economy that is better for their day-to-day life. So when we talk about proactive, value-based multi-alignment, it means ASEAN choose principle first, then find partners who respect those principles. We align with principles, not with camps. And those principles were rule of law, equality, sustainability. And this can give us variation of partners, but consistencies in the values. How do we make this work in practice? The doctrines of ASEAN, collectivity, unity, conformity, those are all goods. Consensus should be our green light to start, but it should not be our reason to stand still. When some are ready to move for the common good, they should lead under the ASEAN flags where others join as capacity to follow. The question should be who can start so these others can follow. Not always about being together, but it's always about who can start early. At times of crisis, there's flood, fire, cyber attacks, tensions at seas, speed becomes compassion. And the citizens of ASEAN deserve a clear and calm ASEAN voice within hours. So we don't need to shout, but we need a steady, we need a timely information and practical support. So here is the balance. We keep big political decisions at consensus level, but we need to let technical expertise align what people feel daily, reasonable, such as reasonable prices, safer products, faster cross-border connections. So, give you an example. When Fisher sells to more markets. When students pay less for education, people experience that ASEAN is a real convenience, not simply diplomatic talking point. So we measure our success by how much we lift those farthest behind. Support reaches first to those with the least, and this means building capacity before demanding compliance, helping each other develop skills and systems so everyone can work together. To build trust, it requires transparency. Promise less, deliver more, and show your work. When we fall short, we admit it quickly and fix it faster. Often in politics, in interstate conversation, corrections is often avoided. But underscores of correction is not weakness, it is credibility. So consensus give us the mandate to begin, compassion give us urgency to act, and fairness give us directions, and transparency give us trust. This is how decisive ASEAN leads quietly, steadily, for everyone. So the real test is not in the meeting rooms, but it is in the specific challenge that will be faced by 2030, where our people will judge whether words may match with actions. So now comes the crucial questions. How do we know if this will actually works? By 2030, our ideas must change daily life for ordinary families, or they're just words on paper. If ASEAN is real, families should feel it in calmer seas, in fairer markets, in cheaper remittance, and in steadier employment. Therefore, it is important for us to focus our measurement not by measuring success in the numbers of meetings held, but by the confidence in the kitchen table of every families. On digital issues, for example, growth has to feel fair to be sustainable. We'll champion data protections and open market so corner shop can sell across borders with the same confidence as big tech platform. So simple payments, transparent algorithm, and clear rules can turn any smartphone into passport for enterprise. On labor mobility, for example, a worker's skill should be recognized wherever they earn a living in our region. With portable credentials and basic protections, mobility becomes an opportunity ladder, not a desperate gamble. For supply chain, for example, ASEAN can be a reliable partner that keeps goods moving regardless of a political weather. We welcome investment that spread risks and build skills. So one day we can say that made in ASEAN means steady and trusted. Here's the bottom line for 2030. People should feel the difference between calmer seas, fairer digital markets, resilient food system, safer workers' pathway, dependable supply chains. But none of this will happen automatically. It requires all of us to think differently about how we engage with major powers and structures our partnership. So how do we engage? Now it's the point. How do we engage with major powers while staying true to ourselves? As ASEAN is a house with many doors, but the house with the strong walls. We keep our doors open to everyone. The US, China, Japan, India, the EU, Australia. But we enter every conversation with one clear ASEAN postures. Our partners may differ, but our principles don't change. The house stands strong because the walls, what are sovereignty, fairness, sustainability, those never move. This means partnership without dependence. We welcome help that builds capacity, but not vulnerability. And I believe real friends help you to expand your choice, not to limit choices. That's how we tell partners from just seeking leverage, but to be truly partners. So we keep one clear test for every deal that ASEAN is making. Does it increase our freedom to choose? Does it strengthen trustworthy institutions? Does it respect our environment and people? If yes to all three, let's move forward, regardless of who is making the offer. So in practice, with America, for example, we deepen innovation partnership. With China, we expand trade where it makes sense. With Japan and the EU, we advance quality infrastructures. With India and Australia, we grow skills and security cooperations. So different doors, same safeguards, community benefit, local jobs, and fair treatment. And transparency becomes our protections. Open terms, competitive biddings, clear outcomes. Every project must protect our forests and coastlines, respect communities, and create opportunities for small businesses. Growth that destroys our heritage is not progress. It's the other way around. So ASEAN sets the table. We don't pit partners against each other. We invite them to compete, to meet our standards and expectations. And the message is simple. Bring your best idea, honor our values, and let's build something that is lasting. Now, this requires us to be disciplined about measuring progress and holding ourselves accountable for results. So let me close this with the hardest part. How we hold ourselves accountable. Because credibility is not built on speeches, but it is built on what we deliver so that people can actually measure. Let's judge ASEAN not by how many hours it takes us to speak when a crisis hits. Because sometimes when a crisis hits, it takes so long for us to make decisions. So we have to count lives that we protect. We need to make sure that children is safe, and we need to make sure that every community is safe and well protected. So we measure progress by how fast we close gaps, not by how high average can climb. Focus on the standard people live daily, days cut from customs, minutes saved from one payment, and dangerous medicine caught. Food safety problems can quickly be solved. So when prices drops and services speed up, people of ASEAN will feel that the community is truly providing what is needed in this region. We build trust through transparency, and it means when leaders admit mistakes quickly, fix them faster, and we need to be able to turn skepticism into partnership. Let me then end where I began, with a promise that is less noise, more proof. So we hope by 2030, ASEAN be known not for the eloquence of speeches whenever we have meetings, but for the time we save people, for the lives we protect, and the opportunity we create. We will be principled in our alignment and decisive in our actions. We will choose cooperation over confrontations, values over convenience, and long-term view offer quick wins. And as we experienced the past 60 years, unity gives us strength, but it is responsibility that gives us directions. So let's make sure the directions we take is the directions that reflect responsibility that we believe in. In this shifting global order, ASEAN will be both the steady compass our region needs and the strong foundations for our people who deserve this. The choice is ours, and the time is now. So let's build the ASEAN for our children so that they will thank us, that this is a community that we can be proud of. Often in the past 50 years, we said this is the region where peace has always been here. Unfortunately, the past few months, we have seen a situation that is rather different when observers of global stability talk about Asia. There are three regions in Asia that often get attention: East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. In the East Asia, we have a few countries like China, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and a community of Taiwan. Imagining peace and stability there is something that is so hard for many of us. There can be stability, but not real peace. In South Asia, the same thing with India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. Tensions has also always been there. But Southeast Asia is an exception. It is in the region where peace, stability has always been present. But in the past few months, tension was there and conflict happens. We're grateful it's been fixed, not completely, but hopefully on the direction of resolutions. But we need to maintain our reputation as a region that is peaceful, a region that is able to maintain stability and able to resolve differences without any arms conflicts. And with that, hopefully, we can build credibility of ASEAN to the world, but also to strengthen cooperation between countries in this region. Let me end it here, and we have more conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. As usual, we have a microphone there for anybody who wants to ask questions. Identify yourself when you start. Before you ask a question, I will ask one from the podium. You mentioned at the end the recent problems in ASEAN vis-a-vis Thailand and Cambodia. These are not new. We've had this problem of a split ASEAN since 2021 when there was a coup in Burma and it descended back into violence. These are existential threats. Do you think Thailand, the recent spat between Cambodia and Thailand was the most serious issue that ASEAN has had to confront vis-a-vis unity? Or do you think it's part of a pattern? Is there an existential threat to ASEAN's future?
Thanks, Dominic. I think, of course, expert in ASEAN would be able to answer that with more credibility than my view. But if I may share, to maintain reputations in this region as conflict-free region, it took us a lot of work to do that. And when a conflict happens, it erases 50 years of work in maintaining peace here. So someone like myself, whenever we're going to conferences outside this region, we always said, look at Southeast Asia. if you want to see peace, stability, look at Southeast Asia. Despite differences, minimum tension was there. And we always compare it to Northeast Asia and and South Asia. So it is one of the biggest issue. Not that the scale is big, but it is big in terms of how we view ourselves as a community who is always able to solve differences without going into arms conflict. And that is something that ASEAN has been proud of. Whenever we have differences, since the mid-60s, that was the last time we have real arms conflict among ourselves. And since then, we've been able to maintain that for about 60 years. And then there we go, this conflict happens for whatever reasons, and it erased that 60 years of reputations as conflict-free region. So, and we have to go another 60 years to actually that. But if we're able now to sort of find solution and back into stability, back into peacefulness in this region, this is just perhaps a footnote that in the past 60 years we have this peace and stability, except this one conflict, and when it happens, it is quickly resolved. That's perhaps would be the answer. But yes, it is big, and we do hope it doesn't repeat to other countries.
Okay, question.
My name is Matthias Peer. I work for the German business daily Handelsblatt. You said in your presentation that the goal of ASEAN should be to expand its choices, not limit it. In the past few months, we have seen a few developments, especially regarding trade deals between ASEAN countries and the United States. For example, Vietnam and Indonesia, those trade deals, they have one clause limiting transshipment, and it is understood that the Americans are trying to limit Chinese supply chains in this region with trade clauses like this. Do you see that as an example that the region might come under more pressure to choose sides between the two big powers, China and United States?
Thank you. This is why I mentioned earlier, Matthias, that it's important for us to go deeper into our values. What are values that we believe in and that serve as our compass? I've been talking about this also in the case of Indonesia foreign policy, that our foreign policy should not be transactional, but it should be value-based policy. That it's not simply about what do we get out of our engagement with the particular major powers, but also about what are the values that we would like our policy to reflect on. So in this context, this is a big market, and we need to have closer cooperation among ourselves. No less than 650 million people, and we should be able to promote intra-ASEAN trade in a much faster speed, and of course able to navigate between all this, especially the tension between the US and China. But if we are acting individually, then we may be trapped in this transactional foreign policy approach. It is our homework in ASEAN to be able to form cooperation as speediest, perhaps as the European Economic Union in the past, so that we can have collective policies from standards to all the way to tariff, for example, from employment regulations all the way to investment regulations. And all of that were issues that have not been fully resolved within ourselves. So when major powers engage us, we tend to act individually, not collectively. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah, Fred Kerpiel, I'm a senior correspondent with Hatton Brown Publishers in the States. And basically, my question was already answered, I think, pretty much between what you had just talked about. I was thinking about why, and I've been around Thailand for about 20 plus years, but ASEAN has never really sort of duplicated what EU has tried to do, and especially right now at this point in time with trying to deal with tariffs, on a unified basis rather than individually. But you are kind of already addressed that. I'm very involved with the wood products industry, and in October, and we don't really understand this in the States, why Indonesia specifically was included with China and Vietnam for really onerous duties that are coming. And I don't know if you are involved with this at all, but that would be very enlightening to me for coming here today for lunchtime if you had a comment on that.
Can you repeat the last point?
Yeah, in October, there's going to be duties that are going to be applied in the wood products industry and I think other industries. And I mean, these are onerous. You're talking about between 100 and 200%, which China is already under for various products like hardwood, plywood, and some other products. And we don't really understand why Indonesia is sort of thrown in there. Unless there is a lot of transshipment, which does happen in Vietnam, or they just basically take the plants down in China and build them in Vietnam, and they ship it off as, Vietnamese product, and basically it's all the raw material is still coming from China. I don't know if that's happening in Indonesia, but anyway, that's a...
Yeah, unfortunately I cannot comment much. I'm not very familiar with that. But if you don't mind, I'll look at it closer after this and get back to you.
You were talking about logistics, consensus, commercial agreements intra-ASEAN that work together so that it's one unity. In a way, that's kind of a fair weather argument. When things are going well, that's what you should be doing. Or maybe you should be doing it harder when it's not going well. But it requires, for success, it requires success in these economies. The Indonesian economy at the moment is in serious trouble. You have huge numbers of graduates that cannot find employment. You are exporting skilled labor to Japan and other places at the moment. Not housemaids, not plantation workers, people who have qualifications. This is not the sign of a healthy economy. So we're in tough times. We have a transactional president in the US who's completely unpredictable, and that's a key trading partner. How do you cope with all these sorts of headwinds?
Mm-hmm. For us, it is always a big challenge when we talk about integrations of ASEAN economy, because for us in a country as big as Indonesia, as widely spread geographically as Indonesia, integrating our domestic economy has always been a challenge as well. So integrations of ASEAN economy from the perspective of Indonesia is like doubling the burden. We have to solve our economic integration within Indonesia, but also making sure that especially areas in the periphery of Indonesia is also positively integrated into ASEAN. To give you one illustration, I don't know if you're familiar or not with Indonesia, but the eastern part, the central part of Indonesia, especially in the north, they can easily integrating to the Philippines economy, to the East ASEAN economy, and benefit much faster than the central and the western part of Indonesia. But we have not been looking in the issue of integrations from that perspective. It is big. It is a big challenge. So Yes, you're right. Today we have been facing quite a challenging times for our economy, given the global context, which is also not so productive in helping us to move faster. However, if we build institution right, cooperations with other ASEAN countries, especially on the issue of investment, employment, and trade agreements, I think if we can fix on that, in the long run, we will be able to have more sustainability of our growth and integration of our economy, despite the fact that in the short term we are facing challenges as we face today.
Question?
Yeah, Steve Parker, I'm a FCC team member. You've laid out a lot of the general approaches, principles, values, both for ASEAN and Indonesia. I'd like to just come down to something more specific, and that's particularly Burma, where we've now seen ASEAN, I don't follow Indonesia as closely anymore, but ASEAN beginning to reproach back to the military government at a time when they're still bombing and killing many people, moving towards a sham election that's endorsed by China. ASEAN, we've heard zero about this, but we do see that more and more military leaders from Burma are coming to ASEAN events. It was good that ASEAN did try to stop that in the past. So that's very specific. How can ASEAN, and then actually from your role in Indonesia, which has taken a good policy towards Burma, how can you maintain pressure to allow the bringing back of democracy in an open environment in Burma?
I think this is one of our biggest challenge. How can we be clear and explicit in agreeing on what are the values that we believe in as a community? I mentioned earlier about human dignity, shared prosperity, sustainability, sovereignty, and democracy, human rights. And we need, I'm not in government right now, but I think it's important for governments of ASEAN to be explicit on echoing these principles in the meetings of ASEAN. And let's agree upon this. And we have seen examples of countries across the globe for the past few hundred years that if you respect these values, we will then in the long run prosper. If we don't, we are going to derail as a community working together. So I think it's very important for ASEAN to be explicit on that. And I don't think letting some of our members of ASEAN, undermining those values and letting it go unchallenged is a good thing. I think we need to be explicit on that, and democratic countries, especially in democratic countries in ASEAN, should be more courageous in echoing this message and be an example of promoting democracy in the region and respecting human rights and those basic values that modern communities, modern countries adopt. So that would be my response to that.
Leading on from there, you talk about ASEAN and democracies rounding up the loose ends in the association. If you go back to 91, when Lee Kuan Yew and Mahathir and Anand Paniyarachun got the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement going, the early days, that was an attempt to bring the economies in and together rationalize them, and it's actually done very well, despite the fact that they all produce very similar products, which makes intra-ASEAN trade complicated. One of the problems at that time was this idea that ASEAN had to move forward as a unit when you had unequal levels of development. And Suharto had to be convinced that AFTA was a good idea. Panjarajan and Panjarajan actually went down to see him twice to discuss this. You, in your presentation, talked about the stronger economies not having to be held back, that they should lead forward and the others should catch up, if I understood what you were saying correctly. Has that particular viewpoint been reinforced by the fact that Myanmar is now a black hole? You cannot wait for Myanmar to sort out its internal problems whilst the rest of ASEAN wants to go forward. And you have problems in Cambodia and Laos, different problems that I don't need to go into. But is that change of attitude that you mentioned because of this problem, that you have lagging members that are holding back the whole bloc?
Yeah. That's why I think it's important for us to allow some to go forward faster and then others to follow.
Right.
Because otherwise we'll be always held back because of some countries, some of our members were not yet there. And coming out from Indonesia that have a lot of homework to do. But I do believe external pressures can help countries to expedite its reform, especially in the era where symmetric information are present to citizens. So they can compare, they can push their local government, they can demand more. So we do hope that by allowing rooms for certain countries to move forward and others follow, ASEAN will go much faster in achieving better economic development for our region, but also to push for others who are now considered as behind or slow to move faster.
Question?
Can you hear me? Hello. This is Mayu Saini from the Fairchild Media Group from the US. I just wanted to develop...
Can you get on mic? We can't hear you.
Is this better?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. It's Mayu Saini from the Fairchild Media Group from the US. I just wanted to develop further on Dominic's question. A lot of Asian countries are looking at developing sectoral dialogue with ASEAN, like India and Bangladesh. India with the comprehensive the agreement for 2026 to 2030. Is that becoming a better dialogue with ASEAN and South Asian countries? Are they more open for economic agreements and talk now, given all the tariff situations? How are you seeing that playing out?
So the question is...
Whether there are dialogues with South Asia and other areas to ASEAN, sectoral, common points of interest, is that becoming more pronounced given the uncertainty that Trump has created with all these tariffs? So basically changing the supply routes.
My sense is this is not really the best time for that, given the dynamics of global trade cooperations that's been impacted by the U.S. policies. It creates sort of an uncertainty. So if I were in their driver's seats, I would say wait until new equilibrium is truly there. Otherwise, we're making all these conversations and then things suddenly change, and each country we're looking at their own interests, and that our conversations may not go anywhere.
Is ASEAN itself being more open to these dialogues at least?
My sense is yes, but you have to look at the reality there. But my feeling is it's more open.
Do you want to ask a question?
Good afternoon. Selamat siang pada Pak Anies. I'm from Indonesia, but a long time resident in Thailand, but always follow the events in Indonesia and ASEAN. The recent interest now is the so-called BRICS. And ASEAN, especially including Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, are considering seriously of joining BRICS, while Indonesia itself, under Mr. Prabowo, has joined BRICS at the beginning of this year. So my question is, what do you think of Indonesia's decision to join BRICS? Has Indonesia abandoned its non-aligned policy by joining BRICS? Thank you.
Clearly a good question.
Yeah. You know, if I may say, the decision has been made, but unfortunately, there was no real domestic conversation within Indonesia why Indonesia should join BRICS to begin with. So when the new government decided to join, I think it was only the first 2 weeks after its inaugurations. And it was also quite a surprise to a lot of international relation observers within Indonesia why Indonesia should join. So it is an issue that is still sensitive domestically, and it is still being discussed. Is it truly the right directions for Indonesia to undertake? The decision has been made so far, but I don't think there is a solid view within the country on this subject. So I am not in position to explain why government make that decision. I actually was among those who were surprised too why that decision was made. In the campaign, when I ran for president, this question was raised, whether Indonesia should join any of these economic cooperations or PAC. And my reply has been, we need to maintain our position as non-aligned and able to collaborate with all parties and have no burden in collaborating with any parties. And Indonesia is big enough, ASEAN is big enough to be able to maintain that position. That was my view, and therefore I did not favor on joining any of this. I hope it responds to your questions.
Are you asking a question?
Yes. Chris Lom, club member. I just had one question relating to your former job as governor of Jakarta. I wondered what your views are on the future of Nusantara and whether it's going to replace Jakarta.
And when? And when? So I think that's the issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your name, please? His name?
Sorry?
Chris.
He's the club member.
Chris, let me answer these questions by stating that moving into a new capital is different than creating a new city. So what Indonesia embarked 3 years ago was not only relocating the capital city, but developing a new city. When Germany moved its capital from Bonn to Berlin, Berlin was already a vibrant city. When Turkey moved from Istanbul to Ankara, Ankara was already a vibrant city. But when the government of Indonesia in 2022 decided, well in 2019 actually, decided to relocate to a city called Nusantara, the city was not there yet. So I think it is now much more questionable than it used to be. I was, and I am among those who thinks we should not embark on that journey to begin with. Indonesia should spend more of its resources to build middle cities across Indonesia, moving it up into bigger cities, more livable cities, than spending its fiscal capacity to develop one cities and in the name of equal economic opportunity, which is not creating. So the project is now much slower than it used to be. It's more questionable than it used to be. So I'm not sure if it's going to end as it was planned, becoming major city in the central of East Kalimantan, but it may not be there. And last year, the ceremony of Indonesian Independence Day was held in Nusantara, and this year was held back in Jakarta, just 2 weeks ago. Oh no, a week ago. Okay, a week, and it sent a message that we're back to Jakarta. And Jakarta, I believe, will always be the center of Indonesian economic activity, at least for the next 50 years. It's not going to change. And Jakarta continue to be the hub of our logistical system, at least for the next 30 years. So it's not going to change. So anyone who are thinking of Nusantara becoming a city replacing Jakarta as an economic city, it's not going to happen. It may serve as an administrative hub, but it will not replace Jakarta as an economic city of economic activities. So with that, if you have plan on building or establishing a branch or extension of your organizations, my suggestion is choose Jakarta instead of Nusantara.
Right, we've got to bring this to a close. Before you go, I'd like to ask you just one question. When we look at ASEAN's interaction with Myanmar, one of the problems is that there is no ASEAN model of government to offer. They're all different, and most of them are not democratic. During the 1990s, when Burma was sort of going through its various juntas, Indonesia was looked at as an example of a possibility, an alternate form of government post-military, that the Indonesians were beginning to get their military under control and has continued to evolve as actually a successful democracy in many ways. We're waiting to see if there's any backsliding on the present watch, but it's actually done very well. Am I correct?
Especially in which part?
Well, the idea that the Indonesian model was one to look at as a way out for Burma. I think that was seriously considered, and people might have been imagining that it happened after 2015, so we found out it did not. Whereas the Indonesian military were worried about Prabowo given his background. But at the moment, Indonesia seems to be holding strong. It's a good example of how change is possible.
Yeah. The transformations that Indonesia went through, especially in the past 25 years, since 1999 until today, can serve as an inspiration. Of course, it cannot be copy-pasted because the context, the circumstances often differ. However, the transformations or democratizations that took place could be a model. And I think in the 90s, there was quite a serious conversation from the junta in Myanmar with the Indonesian leadership on exchanges of views, experience, and on the transitions from military dominated government into a more democratic government. I think now the cooperation doesn't seem to be there as it used to be.
Right.
But Indonesia's experience is key. But if I may underline some key points that Indonesia had, and it is instrumental in our new democracy. What are they? One is electoral process. Even under Suharto's regime, elections was held consistently every 5 years. Okay, and often this is an issue of being overlooked. Look, there is no less than 1 million polling stations. Organizing an election in a new democracy is always difficult. Look what happened in the Middle East with Arab Springs, Eastern Europe, Latin America. Whenever they have new democracy, their problem is about organizing election. For Indonesia, organizing election is a piece of cake, because we had election every 5 years, even though we know what's the result going to be, right? It was not free and fair election. However, the organizations itself was there. So when democratization